Shall we start? Is the audio clear?
Audio clear, Swami. Audio.
ஆழ்வார் எம்பெருமானார் ஜீயர் திருவடிகளே சரணம். ஜீயர் திருவடிகளே சரணம். ஸ்ரீ சைலேஷ தயாபாத்திரம் தீபக்தியாதி குணார்ணவம் யதீந்திர பிரபணம் வந்தே நம்ம ஜாமாதர முனிம் நம்ம ஜாமாத்திரி யோகீந்திர பாதரேகாமயம் சதா ததா யத்தாத்ம சத்தாதிம் ராமானுஜ முனிம் பஜே லக்ஷ்மிநாத சமாரம்பாம் நாத யாமுன மத்தியமாம் அஸ்மத் ஆச்சாரிய பரியந்தாம் வந்தே குரு பரம்பராம் யோ நித்யம் அச்சுத பதாம்புஜ யுக்மருக்ம வியாமோகதஸ்ததிதராணி திருநாயமேனி अस्मद्गुरोर् भगवतोस्य दयैकि सिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये माता पिता युवतयस्तनया भूतिः सर्वं यदेव नियमेन मदन्वयानाम् आद्यस्य न कुलपते रघुलाभिरामं श्रीमत्तदङ्घ्रिगुणं प्रणमामि मूर्ध्ना भूतं सरश्च महताह्वय भट्टनाथ श्री भक्तिसार कुलशेखर योगिवाहान् भक्ताङ्घ्रिरेणु परकाले यतीन्द्र मिश्रान् श्रीमत् पराङ्कुशमुनिं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम्. Our Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam is glorified as Sanatana Dharmam. In our Sat Sampradayam, there have been many acharyas. The acharyas are those who bring us the truth, and they are the ones who lead us to Bhagavan in a very simple and a seamless manner. Because in this age of Kali, it is very, very difficult for anyone to focus and pursue any spiritual path. Obviously, there are so many disturbances. There are so many hurdles which stop us from pursuing spiritual matters. So in this particular situation, one of the most important means to attain Bhagavan is through the mercy of our acharyas. This holds a very key position in our Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam. It can even be said as the distinguishing factor from many, many Sampradayams, Siddhantams, and so on. And it is not something which was taken out of nowhere by our acharyas, but our acharyas have found the essence from Shastram and presented that to the benefit of all of the humanity. In this context, we have to remember Alvar, Emberamanar, Jiyar. These three personalities are the pillars of our Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam. Alvar always denotes Nammalvar. When we say Poigai Alvar, Bhudat Alvar, we know it points to a particular Alvar. But when we say just Alvar, it directly points to Nammalvar, who is considered as the head of all Alvars. Not just all Alvars, he is considered as the Prapanna Jana Kutastha Vaishnava Kulapati. He is glorified as the head of all Vaishnavas. He is considered as the chief of all of the Prapannas, those who are taking up to this path of surrender to Bhagavan, to reach Bhagavan. So Nammalvar is the most revered Alvar as well as Acharya. He holds a distinguished position of being both Alvar and Acharya. He is Alvar because he is totally immersed in Bhagavan. He is Acharya because he is one of the main preceptors of Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam. In fact, he is the first of those Acharyas who are from this Leela Vibhuti, that is this materialistic world, samsara. In our Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam, Sriman Narayana is the first Acharya, Sri Mahalakshmi Tayar is the second Acharya, and the third Acharya is Vishwaksena. All of these three personalities are from Paramapadam, Sri Vaikuntham. Next to these three Acharyas, the fourth Acharya is Nammalvar. But Nammalvar is not from Paramapadam, he is from this samsara. He was divinely blessed by Bhagavan Sriman Narayana himself. He was chosen from the innumerable Atmas, sentient beings who are present in this samsara, and he was given the honor of being an Alvar by Bhagavan himself. So he holds a very special position, being the chosen one and being the one who is very, very dear to Bhagavan himself. Next to Alvar, there is Embermanar, Bhagavad Ramanuja, who is an incarnation of Adishesha, who came into this world on the orders of Bhagavan to uplift all the Jivatmas who are present here. And he accomplished that task in the fullest possible manner to the complete satisfaction of Bhagavan. It was during the times of Bhagavad Ramanuja, the knowledge about Bhagavan, knowledge about Shastram, knowledge about Alvars, Acharyas, previous Acharyas, all of these were spread to the whole of Bharatadesham. He took up many Kainkaryams. Bhagavad Ramanuja is glorified as someone who is very capable, obviously being the incarnation of Adishesha. He is equally knowledgeable to Bhagavan, because in Paramapadam, everyone is Sarvagya. The only difference is Bhagavan is naturally Sarvagya. All others are Sarvagya by the grace of Bhagavan. So being the incarnation of Adishesha, Bhagavad Ramanuja is born with all the necessary knowledge, power, ability to deliver those who are desirous to reach Bhagavan. So Bhagavan, through Bhagavad Ramanuja, accomplished a lot of tasks, bringing many Atmas close to him, reforming the Divideshams, temples, establishing Acharya Pitams, through which the Sampradayam was spread to the nook and corner of Bharatadesham and eventually all over the world as well. He was instrumental in bringing out the essence of Shastram through 9 wonderful granthams, which are known as Navaratnams. Sri Bhashyam is his magnum opus. Vedartha Sangraham, Vedanta Saram, Vedanta Deepam, Gadyatrayam, Nitya Grantham, Bhagavad Gita Bhashyam are all his wonderful literary contribution for the mankind, especially for the community of Bhagavatas. Because this knowledge is very, very important. Without knowledge, one cannot understand about any of the subtle aspects. Gross aspects can be just observed by our senses, but subtle aspects, those which are beyond our senses, they need to be understood through the knowledge acquired from Shastram. And Bhagavad Ramanuja played a very significant role in presenting the knowledge from Shastram as envisioned by the great sages, as envisioned by Alvars, and as envisioned by his Purvacharyas, the Acharyas who were present before him, such as Sriman mAmunigal, Yamunacharya, Uyyakondar, Manakal Nambi, and so many other Acharyas who were present before and during his times. So that was Bhagavad Ramanuja, Emperumanar. Finally, GR is Manavala mAmunigal, who is Yati Punaravataram, Bhagavad Ramanuja's reincarnation. Even though Bhagavad Ramanuja lived a complete life of 120 years, contributing to the mankind in several ways for their well-being, still he had a unfinished task. He focused on Sanskrita Shastram and brought out wonderful commentaries, wonderful granthams, which are summary of those commentaries and so on. And also he brought out the essence of and the focus of Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam through his Gadyams, Sharanagati Gadyam, Sri Vaikunta Gadyam, and Sri Ranganatha, Sri Ranga Gadyam. Still, he felt he had some unfinished task. Hence, he reincarnated as Manavala mAmunigal. Even though his Sanskrita granthams were done with the help of Alvar's Divya Prabandhams, he always had Alvar's Divya Prabandhams in the back of his mind, in the front of his mind, and all over his mind. Still, they were focused on Shastram and they were presented with the aim of convincing Vedantis and those who are focused on Shastram just from the Shastram point of view, without the understanding of Alvar's Divya Prabandhams. It is even said sometimes that, for example, Adi Shankara was well versed in Shastram and he presented his viewpoint, which was required for his times. Had he been exposed to Alvar's Divya Prabandhams, unfortunately, he was not blessed with that. Had he been exposed to Alvar's Divya Prabandhams, perhaps he would have been also immersed in Bhagavad Bhakti, that bhavam of devotion towards Bhagavan and Bhagavatas and so on. It is said sometimes like that. But he wasn't given that task by Bhagavan. Every Acharya is given a particular task by Bhagavan. they come for a particular purpose and they deliver that as per Bhagavan's wish. So Bhagavad Ramanuja, even though he presented the Shastram in the proper way, as the sages envisioned, as Alvars envisioned, as Bhagavan desired, still it was only limited to Samskrita, Vedantam, Shastram. He had this craving towards Alvars Pasurams, which we see, for example, in Ramanuja Nutrandadi, we see Solar Tamilurum Mundrum, Surudigal Nangum, Ella Araneri Yavum Terindavan. In that Pasuram, it is explained that Bhagavad Ramanuja is totally knowledgeable in Alvars Pasurams, in the deep meanings which are revealed in Alvars Pasurams and so on. Still, he focused on Samskrita Shastram. So he wanted to complete the unfinished task. So he reincarnated as mAmunigal in Alvar Tirunagari. He grew up in Shikil Kidaram for a short time frame, which was his grandfather's place. But he soon returned to Alvar Tirunagari, which is his birthplace. And he was attracted towards Thiruvaimozhi Pillai, Sri Shailesha, who was the Acharya heading our Sampradayam, remaining in Alvar Tirunagari. He came and he surrendered to Thiruvaimozhi Pillai. He accepted Thiruvaimozhi Pillai as his Acharya, and he learned all the important meanings of our Sampradayam from Thiruvaimozhi Pillai, and was serving in the Bhavishedacharyan Sannidhi, Bhagavad Ramanuja Sannidhi, which was established by Thiruvaimozhi Pillai in the western part of Alvar Tirunagari. He was doing Tiruvaradhanam for Bhagavad Ramanuja Bhavishedacharya Vigraha, Sri Vigraha, as per the orders of Thiruvaimozhi Pillai. And he had great attachment towards Bhagavad Ramanuja. It is, in fact, surprising. One may even wonder, mAmunigal is incarnation of Bhagavad Ramanuja. Why would he be attached towards himself? For that, our Acharyas explain, just as Sri Rama worshipped Sri Ranganatha, Sri Ranganatha is the Kuladevam for Ikshvaku dynasty. Hence, Sri Rama carried out worship of Periya Perumal, who we see in Sri Rangam today. The Mula Vigraham, Mula Tirumeni, was worshipped by Sri Rama himself. That was to show us how to worship Bhagavan. Only Bhagavan can show that to us. Hence, he himself worshipped his own divine form and demonstrated us how to worship Bhagavan. Similarly, how to worship Bhagavad Ramanuja? Who else can show that to us perfectly than Bhagavad Ramanuja himself? So he incarnated as mAmunigal and he worshipped his own divine form, Bhagavad Ramanuja form, in Alvar Tirunagari, Bhavishedacharyan Sannidhi, and demonstrated us how to worship Acharya, what mood one should be in. And that mood can be seen in both Itiraja Vimshati and Arti Prabandham. Itiraja Vimshati is the first Prabandham of mAmunigal, where he cries out towards Bhagavad Ramanuja, requesting Bhagavad Ramanuja to immediately relieve him from all the sufferings in this samsara. That was the mood right from the beginning for Manavada mAmunigal. Even when he was a brahmachari and then subsequently a grihastha, he was always having that same mood towards Ramanuja, towards the Acharya. He was situated in this Charama Parvanishta, this great devotion towards Bhagavad Ramanuja was demonstrated right from the beginning. Just as Ilaya Perumal, Lakshmana, had Bhagavad Bhakti right when he was born, similarly, Manavada mAmunigal had this devotion towards Bhagavad Ramanuja right from his early ages, and that continued till his end, where he was, even in his final days, when he composed Arti Prabandham. It is said that this Arti Prabandham was composed over time. Whenever mAmunigal had great emotions towards Bhagavad Ramanuja, he sang certain pasarams of Arti Prabandham, and it was composed as a Prabandham in the end. It is also said that it is composed towards the end out of great sorrow in separation from Bhagavad Ramanuja. So this Yatirajavamshati and Arti Prabandham, both of these granthams, one in Sanskritam, another in Tamil, manifest Manavada mAmunigal's great love and longing towards Bhagavad Ramanuja, where he showed his Charma Parvanishta. He manifested that Charma Parvanishta. So in this manner, Alvar, Emberemanar, Jiyar have great significance for our Sampradayam. One of the significant aspects in this is all three of them have connection with Alvar Tirunagari. We know that Alvar and Manavada mAmunigal are born in Alvar Tirunagari, and Bhagavad Ramanuja, even before his incarnation in Sri Perumbudur, his avataram, his incarnation was revealed by Nammalvar 4,000 years ago. That is when this Bhavishadacharya Vigraham was brought out from Tamarabarani river by Madhurakavi Alvar. So Bhagavad Ramanuja's incarnation also have a connection in this Alvar Tirunagari. So with this brief introduction of Alvar, Emberemanar, Jiyar, who are the pillars of our Sampradayam, let us move on to the topic. Sometimes we start a particular aspect and we become immersed into it without even realizing that about 25 minutes have gone into the discussion. Adiyan would like to thank Lakshmi Kumar Swami and many Swamis who are present in Dallas and many other places and who are actively engaged in propagating our Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam on a regular basis through these wonderful efforts of organizing upanyasams, helping in publishing books, and organizing many programs in both the US and back in Bharata Desham. In this manner, Mangala Shasanams to their Kankaryams, their continuous efforts in this manner. Adiyan praise to Alvar, Emberemanar, Jiyar for such continuous Kankaryams for all of them. It is their desire and their effort in organizing this 2 weeks long effort during Manavada mAmunigal's Tirunakshatra Mahotsavam to organize such upanyasams for the benefit of everyone, involving many wonderful scholars, many wonderful topics. In that, Adiyan has been given this topic of commentaries of Manavada mAmunigal for rahaSya granthams. It was discussed just a couple of days ago. We had a brief talk about the topic for the particular occasion, and a couple of different topics were discussed, and this one was finalized. Adiyan would like to share a few thoughts on this particular topic of commentaries for rahaSya granthams by Manavada mAmunigal. As we have seen the greatness of Manavada mAmunigal, who is popularly known as Jiyar or Periya Jiyar, we also have to recollect Ponadikal Jiyar, his contribution, because subsequent to the times of Bhagavad Ramanuja, on the orders of Manavada mAmunigal, it was Ponadikal Jiyar, the first Jiyar of Thothathri Mutt, Vanamamalai Mutt, who had traversed all of Bharata Desham and established our Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam, Vishishtadvaita Siddhantam throughout Bharata Desham about 650 years ago, on the orders of Bhagavad Ramanuja's reincarnation, that is Manavada mAmunigal. It was his contribution which laid the seeds for subsequent propagation of Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam throughout the Bharata Desham. He remained inseparable from Manavada mAmunigal, and Adiyan is happy to have connection to this mutt. Asmadacharya belongs to this particular mutt, Vanamamalai Mutt. So that is why we, in our mutt, we always say Jiyar Tiruvadigalai Sharanam and again Jiyar Tiruvadigalai Sharanam, because both were existing as sannyasis at the same time. Both Manavada mAmunigal and Ponadikal Jiyar were remaining as Jiyar. That is why Manavada mAmunigal was known as Periya Jiyar popularly, and Ponadikal Jiyar was known as just Jiyar at that time. And they were very close to each other. Manavada mAmunigal considered Ponadikal Jiyar as a prana suhrit because he remained very close to his heart always, right from his early days till the final days of his Leela in this material world. Manavada mAmunigal was very, very compassionate. He was very similar to Bhagavad Ramanuja in many ways. Just as Bhagavad Ramanuja reformed temples, re-established temple norms, regained the honors for many Kainkirya Paras, and organized the proper temple Kainkaryams in the Divideshams and so on. Manavada mAmunigal also re-established the temple norms, regained the Kainkaryams, reinstated the Kainkaryams for many Kainkirya Paras who had lost their Kainkaryams during the Kalaba Kalam. There was a time when the invaders had rampaged the Divideshams, especially Sri Rangam and many other Divideshams, and many Kainkirya Paras had lost their lives. Many granthams were burnt down. Many of the temples were demolished. In this particular situation, Manavada mAmunigal appeared in this world. He learnt all the Sampradaya principles from Tiruvai Pillai, and he arrived in Sri Rangam after Tiruvai Pillai ascending to Sri Vaikuntham, Paramapadam. And at that time, Sri Rangam was in a very disturbed state. It was Manavada mAmunigal who re-established the temple worship in a very proper manner. He himself went and searched for all the lost granthams. Many granthams were lost. They were taken away to various other places to preserve them from the invaders, because usually when the invaders come, their target will be the temples, the literature, and the people who are propagating the literature. They usually destroy all of these so that the sampradayam and the dharmam cannot survive. This is how many civilizations were lost by invaders. They were destroyed by invaders. Fortunately, our Sanatana Dharmam is something which cannot be destroyed by anyone completely, because Bhagavan always preserves the Sanatana Dharmam through one way or the other. So he preserved, Bhagavan preserved the temples, the literature, and the Acharya Parampara through special incarnations such as Bhagavad Ramanuja, mAmunigal's, and so on. So mAmunigal's, on returning to, or on arriving in Srirangam, he brought out all the literatures from various places. Many of them were partially destroyed. Many of the commentaries and many of the wonderful literature could not be brought back. So he had to go to many acharyas, scholars who were relocated to various places, not just divisions, because some of these divisions were under attack. They would move to remote villages and so on. So mAmunigal would go to those places and learn the important principles, try to reconstruct the lost knowledge based on the oral instructions from the acharyas, and whatever palm leaves manuscripts he would get, he would himself sit for hours and rewrite all of those, which is a very strenuous process. One incident, for example, is documented in Acharya Hridayam. Even at his very old age, he would be writing down the commentary of Acharya Hridayam, which is a composition of Adagamnada Perumal Nayanar, who is the younger brother of Pillai Lokacharya. This composition of Acharya Hridayam is such a wonderful treatise. For that, mAmunigal was writing an elaborate commentary. At that time, he was more than 70 years old, and he was leaning on his simhasana, and he was writing this commentary with great difficulty. Oyil Annan, who is one of the prime disciples of mAmunigal, came and asked mAmunigal at that time, why are you taking up so much strain at this old age? Why don't you just guide us? We will try to document these for you. Why do you have to write all of these yourself? That was asked by Oyil Annan. For that, mAmunigal replied, I am doing this all for your sons, your grandsons, your descendants, and not just yours, but the future generation of all Sri Vaishnavas. Because it is said that usually when these manuscripts are written, if one person dictates and another person writes, there is a possibility that some words could be misinterpreted, misheard, and they may be written incorrectly. It happens sometimes. Hence, it is said that if the person who knows the information, if he himself writes it down, then it will be better, because the information will be preserved as it is without any loss of knowledge. Hence, mAmunigal would take up so much trained in documenting all of these, and that is what he was telling Kovilannan, that it is not just a matter of documenting it by me dictating it to someone and someone writing it down, but there is always possibility of mistakes creeping in. Hence, I am doing it myself for the benefit of all of you. So that was his great compassion. He was always engaged in preserving these wonderful knowledge from Shastram and Sampradayam. As we were seeing previously, Bhagavad Ramanuja had the unfinished task of documenting the essence of Tamil Shastram, that is Dravida Shastram, especially Divya Prabandham and its commentaries. It was mAmunigal who brought out the great commentary of Id Vyakyanam to the benefit of the entire world. The Id Vyakyanam, Id Muppattarayarapadi Vyakyanam for Thiruvaimozhi, which was given by Nambillai, documented by Vadakatirividya Pillai, was preserved subsequently by Iyunni Madhava Perumal as per the orders of Nambillai, which was orally transmitted to Iyunni Padmanabha Perumal, and then Nalur Pillai and Nalur Achan Pillai, and subsequently Thiruvaimozhi Pillai learnt it from Nalur Achan Pillai, and from Thiruvaimozhi Pillai, Manavada mAmunigal learnt this Idu Vyakyanam and fully memorized it. It is not a small grantham. It is a very elaborate grantham, and he fully memorized it. And he was always meditating upon this Idu Vyakyanam, and he subsequently propagated this Idu Vyakyanam in a very grand manner. As we all know, in front of Sri Ranganatha, he gave this commentary, this explanation for whole year, that is 10 months. He gave these discourses in front of Sri Ranganatha, and finally Sri Ranganatha came as the son of a Archaka and submitted this wonderful Taniyan, Sri Shailesha Dayapatram Dibhaktiyadi Gunanam Yatindra Pravanam Mande Rama Jamataram Munim. This Taniyan was offered by Sri Ranganatha in glory of Manavada mAmunigal. We all know that Charitram. So he took up this task of propagating this Tamil Shastram, Dravida Shastram, Divya Prabandham's commentaries, and subsequently the commentaries for rahaSya granthams. These rahaSya granthams are most confidential information, which are to be compulsorily learnt by every Sri Vaishnava who goes through Pancha Samskaram. Tirumantram, Dvaya Mahamantram, Charma Shlokam are usually highlighted as the rahaSya Trayam, the three most important rahaSyams, which are taught as part of our Pancha Samskaram. The Acharya who performs this Pancha Samskaram to the Shishya gives the Mantropadesham as well as the meanings of these mantrams. Similarly, Artha Panchakam, Tattvatrayam, and many other aspects, confidential aspects such as Acharya Abhimanam, the mercy of Acharya, which is the guiding force for Sri Vaishnavas. These rahaSya principles, they are all documented by our Acharyas in various places. For example, we saw Idu Muppattarayarapadi Vyakyanam. There is Vyakyanam given by Periyavachan Pillai for all of the Divya Prabandhams. In these commentaries, in a scattered manner, these rahaSya principles are documented. Pillai Lokacharya, one of the most important acharyas of our Paramparai, Acharya Paramparai, he has given 18 rahaSya granthams, and even more, but mainly 18 rahasya granthams. In these 18 granthams, he gives all of these rahasya principles in a very precise and concise manner. Among these 18 granthams, Mumukshupadi, Tattvatrayam, Sri Vachanabhushanam are considered as most significant, and they are kept as Kalakshepa granthams. Mumukshupadi talks about Tirumantram, Dayamahamantram, and Charamashlokam in a very elaborate manner. He takes us through a journey of these rahasyams, where he disseminates the knowledge about Tirumantram, Dayamahamantram, and Charamashlokam in the most systematic way. There can be no better grantham than Mumukshupadi to understand the rahasya trayam. He takes us through the rahasya trayam in a step-by-step manner. Each letter of the rahasya trayam is explained by Pillai-Lokacharya. Each word is explained. Combination of words are explained. And then portions of the rahasyam. For example, in Dvaya Mahamantram, the first part, second part, those are explained. In this manner, Charma Shlokam, the first line of the Shlokam, second line of the Shlokam, that is explained. And then each word, and then each letter. In this manner, it is a great analysis of the Rahasya Trayam. Similarly, Tattva Trayam is a wonderful grantham by Pillai-Lokacharya, where he talks about the three tattvams, three truths, Chit, Achit, and Ishvara. What are insentient beings? What are sentient beings? Who is Bhagavan? And so on, are all elaborated in this wonderful Tattvatrayam. This is even known as a concise Sri Bhashyam, a short narration of Sri Bhashyam. That is how significant this Tattvatrayam Grantham is. Then there is Sri Vachanabhushanam, which talks about the most confidential aspects of Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam. What is Purushakaram? What is Upayam? What is Bhagavan's Nirhetuka Kripa? What is Acharya Lakshanam? What is Shishya Lakshanam? What is the ultimate means and goal for Sri Vaishnavas? All of these principles are explained in an elaborate way in Sri Vachanabhushanam by Pillai-Lokacharya. These three granthams are the most important rahasya granthams. In addition to these three, we saw Acharya Hridayam a little while ago. This is given by Adigamnada Perumal Nayanar, who is the younger brother of Pillai-Lokacharya, where the greatness of Tiruvaimozhi, greatness of Nammalvar, the purports, the important aspects of Tiruvaimozhi, the inner meanings of Tiruvaimozhi, all of these are explained in great detail. Because there were times when people were not accepting the greatness of Alvars and their Divya Prabandhams. So Pillai-Lokacharya and Adigamnada Perumal Nayanar, based on the greatness which they understood from the Granthams, Purvacharya Granthams, such as Periyavachan Pillai's commentaries, Nampillai's commentaries, and many oral traditions, whatever they have understood, they had documented them in a very clear manner in their rahasya granthams, such as Mumukshupadi, Tattvatrayam, Sri Vachanabhushanam, Acharya Hridayam, and so on. These rahasya granthams must be learnt by every Sri Vaishnava. There is no exception for this. Sometimes people think that we can just learn Divya Prabandhams, Nityanusandhanam. We can just go to temple, worship Perumal, Tayar, Alvars, Acharyas, and that can be sufficient. This kind of mentality has developed over time in our Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam. But certainly that is not the case. Every Sri Vaishnava must understand rahaSya Trayam. Without understanding the meanings of rahaSya Trayam, we don't have a clear idea about who we are, what is our objective, and so on. And these rahaSya principles are explained in these rahaSya granthams. Now, how do we learn these rahaSya granthams? We have to learn them from the commentaries of Purvacharyas, hearing them from authoritative scholars and acharyas, and so on. Now, these commentaries are given by mAmunigal. mAmunigal has given commentaries for these rahaSya granthams. We saw how he said that these commentaries are for the benefit of your sons and descendants to Koil Annan. So it is purely for the benefit of all of us that these commentaries are given. So when we look at these commentaries given by mAmunigal, now mAmunigal has given commentaries for Mumukshapadi, Tattvatrayam, Vachanabhushanam, and Acharya Hridayam. So these commentaries bring out the heart of Purvacharyas, especially the author of these granthams. Because when we see these rahaSya granthams, they are in the sutra format. Sutram or aphorism, they are very crisp, they are very short. It is very difficult to easily understand the full meaning. We may get an idea when we look at the sutrams, but to get the full meaning of the sutrams, we have to depend on the commentaries. And mAmunigal, being glorified as Vishatavakshikamani, one who gives commentaries as much as required. When we look at the commentary of mAmunigal, we will understand that there is no one word extra or less. There is as much as required. He would deliver the full meanings in the clearest possible way through his commentaries. When we look at the commentaries, especially mAmunigal's commentary, there are certain significant aspects. The avatarika, for example, each of these granthams, Mumukshapadi, Tattvatrayam, Sri Vachanabhushanam, Acharya Hridayam, all of these, in the commentary, mAmunigal first gives a very wonderful introduction for each of these granthams. Because through these introductions, we will understand what is the intent of the author, what is the greatness of the author, what is the core principle which is delivered in this particular rahaSya grantham. For example, if you take Mumukshapadi, first he will explain the sequence in this particular grantham is framed. For example, Tirumantram is explained first, Daya Mahamantram is explained next, and Charma Shlokam is explained subsequently. So what is this sequence? What is the purpose of this particular sequence? Who is the author? What is the greatness of this particular author? What he is thinking in his mind? All of these will be beautifully explained first in the introduction, so that when we go into this rahaSya grantham, we will have clear idea of what we are studying. Because when we study a particular grantham, we should know what we are studying, what is the greatness of the author, and so on. So these are all beautifully explained in the avatarika, in the introduction. Now there is a introduction for the whole grantham, and there is also introduction for each sutram. For each sutram, mAmunigal will give the connection between this sutram and the previous sutram. Similarly, at every significant points, he will give a summary of a set of sutrams we had gone through. For example, at the end of Tirumantra Prakaranam, he would give a beautiful summary of what is discussed in Tirumantra Prakaranam. Not just at the end of the particular Prakaranam, but even in between, he would give, mAmunigal will give summary for a particular set of sutrams. For example, if Pranavam is explained in a set of sutrams, he would summarize what we saw in that particular section. This is another significant aspect of mAmunigal's commentaries. Another important aspect in mAmunigal's commentaries is how he quotes Purvacharyas liberally. In many places, instead of presenting his own views, he would say, Nanjiyar had explained this. Nambillai has explained this. Parashara Bhattara has explained this. Bhagavad Ramanuja has explained this. So he would freely quote, naming the particular Acharya, what he explained, and so on, without fail. This way, his honesty is very much revealed in these places. This is why mAmunigal is glorified as Poyilada Manavada mAmunigal, because there is no trace of lies or taking credit of others' work and so on in mAmunigal's commentaries. He always quotes Acharyas to the fullest possible extent. So these are some significant aspects of mAmunigal's commentaries to the rahaSya granthams. Without mAmunigal's commentaries, it will be impossible to understand the full purport of all the Purvacharya rahaSya granthams, whether it is Mumukshapadi or Tattvatrayam. In Tattvatrayam, in many places, mAmunigal explains the principles based on Sri Bhashyam, Vedartha Sangraham, and so on, in a very effortless and seamless manner. People who are who are studying these granthams, they can understand these principles in a very, very easy manner. So these are some important aspects relating to commentaries given by mAmunigal, especially for rahaSya granthams. Without these commentaries, it will be very, very difficult for us to understand, and it is very important for all of us to study these granthams without fail, with proper guidance. That is why we have the Kalakshepam tradition, whether it is Mumukshapadi, Tattvatrayam, Sri Vachana Bhushanam, Acharya Hridayam. These are to be learnt from Acharyas and scholars who are well versed in these topics, who have heard these from elders in the parampara, in the proper Sat Sampradaya tradition. We have to study them to fulfill the desire of our Purvacharyas, such as Manavada mAmunigal, because their only expectation from us is to study these granthams and follow them as much as possible, because studying is one, following is another important aspect. We can study number of literature, granthams, and so on, but if we are not able to follow any of those, then that is not going to solve the purpose. So we have to try and put things into practice as much as possible. For that, we have to look up to inspirations. Our Purvacharyas are our inspirations. They have lived their lives in the most perfect manner. So we look up to them and we try to follow their instructions and their conduct and try to imbibe that in our lives as well. With this, Adiyan will conclude the session. Adiyan thanks everyone of the organizers for organizing such wonderful series of lectures, in which Adian is also added, though Adian does not deserve to be in that particular list of scholars. Still, due to the affection of many of the Bhagavatas who are organizing these programs, Adian have been given an opportunity. Adian thanks everyone for this particular opportunity and request everyone to immerse in mAmunigal's Utsavam in the upcoming days. In the next few days, Utsavam is starting in all the Divyadeshams. We'll be celebrating the Utsavams in a grand manner as much as possible. So Adian requests everyone to engage and take this opportunity to study the granthams and also potentially start listening to some kalakshepams and keep it a habit in the lives, in our daily routine, to listen to these kalakshepams, which are nowadays available freely in many websites, YouTube channels, and so on, CDs. So Adian request everyone to make use of this opportunity, because it is the one thing we can do for our Purvacharyas, studying their literary works and following them as much as possible. Alvar Emberumanar Jiyar Tiruvadigalai Sharanam, Jiyar Tiruvadigalai Sharanam.
Adian.
Adian.
Dhanyosmi Swami. The theme of the Upanyasams that we are going to have mainly around this rahaSya granthams. So Devar's introductory talk sets the ground for everybody to join and then enjoy the Upanyasam. So Dhanyosmi for giving that opportunity to get the introduction, and then thanks for everybody. Maybe we can unmute and then ask any questions, comments about Swami's speech.